Welcome to First Issues. In a previous episode, we explored how economic hardships perpetuate an increase in gender-based violence, or GBV for short. Our guest then, therapist at Botswana Network for Mental Health, Keletso Motsage, explained that this form of violence can have negative effects on a victim to the detriment of their mental health.
When it comes to understanding the mind of a perpetrator, it's important to understand, or rather try to take it from their point of view. So one of the major things that you'll find is a sense of control. They want to control the environment, so they're very controlling in nature, very manipulative in order for them to be in control of what is going on. They feel a sense of entitlement, and they feel that it is their right or their purpose to control every aspect of the relationship. So it becomes very toxic in terms of how they treat their partner. They have a sense of ownership over their partner, whether male or female. So you'll find that the communication is very toxic and hostile and very belittling. It's really about manipulating their character, the way that they think, making them feel as if they're not worthy, making them feel as if they don't have an option to leave. Making them feel as if even if they did leave, no one else would want them. In the workplace, you'll find that the greatest loss or impact is really geared towards the victims, because victims experience all sorts of emotional and psychological distress due to the gender-based violence that they experience. So they end up developing depressive symptoms or full-blown depression. They could also end up developing post-traumatic stress disorder. So just to paint a picture, with depression, some of the symptoms are hopelessness and helplessness, feeling worthless and guilty, loss of interest in daily activities, loss of energy, feeling fatigued and tired all the time, changes in sleep patterns, and their appetite as well. So imagine a depressed person, undiagnosed, tormented by the trauma at home, sitting in the workplace. There's no way that they will be able to function and produce what needs to be produced without treatment, without intervention. Post-traumatic stress disorder, there are quite a few symptoms, but some of the symptoms are recurring memories about the traumatic event, having flashbacks where they physically feel like they are reliving the experiences that they have been through, having nightmares which disturbs their sleep, being avoidant of places and people and things and conversations that remind them of the trauma, feeling depersonalization, which is where you are emotionally detached, you feel numb, you become cynical, you have a negative view of the world and things around you, you struggle to maintain relationships. So having PTSD, having depression, developing anxiety disorders as well. These are things that play into the victims' lives and then cause them to be unproductive at work because of them being plagued by these different disorders, plagued by these different mental illnesses, plagued by the reality of the environment at home.
Additionally, auditing firm KPMG states that just in South Africa alone, the costs relating to GBV in 2017 were estimated between 28.4 billion rands to 42.4 billion rands per year in lost wages through leave days, sick calls, and productivity. Sadly, victimized individuals and their families continue to bear the greatest proportion of these costs in medical and legal bills. Our quest to continue our discussion on this topic this evening took us to the village of Manyana, where we talked to a GBV survivor whose story of abuse that almost took her life ended up being her reason to be an activist against GBV. Malebogo Molefe tells us that her perpetrator is a former romantic partner who shot her 8 times and left her for dead. Malebogo, thank you so much for coming here on First Issues and affording us your time. Perhaps before we go any further, you could share with us your experience with GBV.
I have had a very traumatic experience with gender-based violence. As you may have heard or may have read, I was attacked by my ex-boyfriend who shot me 8 times on different parts of my body, which subsequently left me confined to a wheelchair. It's an experience that really left me fighting for my life, as you may imagine. It was a very horrific experience, and I'm happy that I was able to survive that difficult ordeal, and now I'm here.
Our discussion this evening stems from trying to find the link between GBV and economic hardships without excusing your perpetrator's behavior. Was your experience anyhow related to any form of economic insecurity? Say, for example, stress from a job loss, stress from tight finances, or anything relating to money?
I wouldn't necessarily speak on his behalf because I wasn't really well vested in how he used his money. I mean, it was just a boyfriend and girlfriend relationship without any interferences on another person's monetary issues. So on my part, I was working, I had good savings. I worked as a circuit programmer, and because I have a background of IT.
We understand that the impact of GBV on a victim can be so much so that it has a debilitating impact on their mental health. You find a victim unable to be productive at work. They lose interest in their hobbies and try to keep themselves locked away from the people in their lives. So on this front, how has this experience affected you?
When I was released from hospital, I was undergoing a lot of stress. I only foresaw negatives. I could only foresee negatives. I never thought that I could go back. I never actually wanted to go to work because at the time I was not laid off. The bone of contention is that when you're undergoing an experience as immense as the one that I was, you have a lot of doubt. You go through a lot of emotional crisis. Surviving the attack was one of the most difficult experiences of my life. Firstly, there was the trauma part. And as you can imagine, I had to fight for bare survival, only to undergo years of recuperation and rehabilitation. I had to do a lot of counseling, which is part of where I needed to use a lot of money. And I had to do rehabilitation psychologically and physically. And of course, because of the extent of the injury, there was the disability itself, which meant that disability on its own is cost a lot of money. And being disabled, having lost my job at the time, meant that I then, because of the amount of time that I spent in hospital, meant I used a lot of finance, and then I got to a financial crisis because then I was laid out of hospital because my medical aid had elapsed, which meant then I came back because I was hospitalized in South Africa in a private institution. I then got back to Botswana and then went back to Marina because then I was then left in the lurch. I didn't have any financial stability to sustain my injury and my health care. And you have a lot of regrets. I also was humiliated because of the amount of backlash that you receive from social media. You know, there's a lot of impact that goes when someone is undergoing a thing and other people have a reflection of their own or misconception about what has occurred. Because as you may know, passion killing, people often have their own misconceptions about what must have happened and stuff like that. And they're usually mostly related with money, that you may have used this person for money and that is why they tried to take your life. Unfortunately, my family was there to offer that support, and through their love and their belief that I could be something and amount to something, I regrouped and I was able to have a positive outlook towards life.
Malebogo, we also understand that you have managed to turn your story into a tale of hope. So how did you rise above all of this?
Healing is a journey. So first of all, when I was sitting here at home recuperating, in my journey of recuperation, I had a lot of stories of young girls being taken in the most harrowing way. And then it dawned on me that when something hasn't happened to you yet, you don't put so much thought into it. You are oblivious of the hurt and pain that their families may be going through, or the country itself. But then, because it had happened to me, I started to listen, to watch, and I then wanted to make a difference. I wanted to be an example. I wanted to use my story as an example for other young girls to learn from, to look at the red flags in their lives, to report violence as and when it happens, to not wait until something drastic happens, because this is my background and this is my story. So I started small. I spoke on different platforms just to influence laws that can protect young women in Botswana. And it is because of that work that I have been hugely rewarded. I was awarded in 2017 as the International Woman of Courage, an award that was bestowed by the First Lady Melania Trump. Besides the fact that I cannot walk, which is one of the main hindrances to getting to where I need to go, but it doesn't necessarily stop me from achieving my dream. I mean, I was able to be motivated and inspired through my work to start a foundation called Malebogo Molefe Foundation Trust, which does a lot of advocacy for women and persons with disabilities. And I also conduct an annual tournament that is based on uplifting the lives of persons with disabilities into sports, which is the annual Malebogo Molefe wheelchair basketball tournament. Even last year, it got its very first award from the Botswana Sports Council Annual Awards, which was a huge milestone for both Malebogo Molefe Foundation for persons with disabilities, who contributes towards the wheelchair tournament, and to Botswana Basketball Association, who supports us immensely.